Welcome, friends. I'm so glad that you're here today. My name is Amy Joy Tofty, and I serve as the Director of Education for NCFCA, and you all are in for a special treat. So, our guest speaker today is Mrs. Leah Lemaster Horton, and she is an NCFCA alumni parent. She also is an educational consultant and teaches students how to prepare for the professional tests. So she helps them gain confidence. She helps them know what's possible. She gives them a vision for what is coming down the pike. And she helps them to score well on their college exams and also some secret tips to help them with the college admissions process. And after she is done presenting, we'll take a few questions. And then we have some sponsors in the room who are going to share with you some of the opportunities that are available to NCFCA students. So will you join me in welcoming Mrs. Leila Master Horton?
Have you ever thought to yourself, have I done enough? Have I done enough to help my child be ready for their college entrance exams and to be able to win scholarships that turn that dream school into reality? Well, if you have, you're not alone. I agonized over that when I was going through that process. And I'm here to let you know that God does not want us to be anxious about anything. He is there for us, He will help us through the process. And when I was going through it, I prayed that God would introduce me to somebody who would hold my hand and tell me exactly what I needed to know and do during that process. And God answered my prayers and He said no. But He did end up helping me learn the process so that I could teach it to my children. And also, I have had so many homeschool moms and friends encourage me to share what I know with others. So, my main message is that you can do this. You can learn everything you need to know through the college entrance exam process, as well as going after those honors programs. And I am here to help. So, again, my name is Leah Lemaster Horton. I have been an educator for 20 years. I homeschooled for 18 years. My children are all grown now. We competed in NCSCA for 12 years, and I was highly involved in Legacy for Christ. I actually started my own club, Voices of Truth, for a while, which was a part of a Communicators for Christ chapter. And then we ended up merging with Legacy for Christ in Orlando, Florida. So this is a picture of my three children right before we started our homeschool journey. And then I blinked, and my oldest was about to be going into high school. She looks really young, the other, but she was about to be going into high school. And then I blinked again, and we were done, and we had homeschooled for 18 years. So my story is that I was from Orlando, and most families in Florida are trying to win Bright Futures. Bright Futures is the state scholarship, which allows a student, if they score, and I'll just use SAT as an example, if they score a SAT of a 1330 or above, they're able to win full tuition scholarships at 39 different colleges in the state of Florida. And so I wanted to make sure that we had options. That was my goal. So I did help my own three children get their scores up to be able to go after Bright Futures and earn that. Once we had free college in our back pocket in Florida, they wanted to look into honors programs, and all three of them ended up choosing private Christian schools, which we would not have been able to do that had they not earned those scholarships. So we'll get into that in a little bit. My main point when it comes to the college entrance process is finding ways to stand out from the crowd. So, in doing that, we'll be talking about it. I want students to be authentically themselves, to go about learning more and more about their own interests, about themselves. And when they're going to do a potential passion project, that's the purpose, is to learn about themselves and to stand out from others that are applying to college. So, first, let's start with what is a passion project? A passion project is simply something that the student is interested in, that they love, that they're passionate about, that they want to spend time doing a project, not just to check off the list. Oh, I did a passion project, right? In high school, I'm good to go. No, the whole purpose of the passion project is for them to learn about themselves and to turn around and bless their community, to serve. Um, these are just a very small few of sample passion projects. So Eagle Scout projects, soccer camps, theater camps, robotic showcases, research opportunities, math competitions, science fair, entrepreneur camps. Um, these are just some examples. So if your student is an athlete, they've played varsity soccer for all 4 years, my advice is to take that love of the sport and turn it around and host an inner city camp, soccer camp. And that process of going, okay, I have this idea. Now, how do I take that idea and make it come to fruition? Well, there's a lot of work involved with that. And it's taking their love and not just doing something about themselves. It's turning around and blessing others. It also gives them something to talk about and, and write about in their college entrance essays, as well as something to talk about on those scholarship interviews. And it helps them conquer their fears. Now, I just want to stop right here and let you know that I realized a fear that my children had that I had no idea they had. And it was making a phone call to somebody they don't know, an adult they don't know. So in that process of putting on these projects, they had to communicate with others. And sometimes a text or an email was a little slower than needed, and they needed to actually make a phone call. And I had no idea that they were afraid of that. So they had to conquer that fear to be able to put these projects on. So we're going to talk for a second about something that I believe is a wonderful benefit to doing a passion project, and that is that the student develops their professional capital. So no matter what career you're in, if you're a doctor, you're a teacher, or you're a professional student, it is wise to learn how to grow in that field. And we're talking about students becoming a professional student. They're developing their professional capital. It's referred to as capital because it is valuable, it has intrinsic value. Professional capital is made up of three things. It is human capital, social capital, and decisional capital. So human capital is any time that that student is increasing their skills, anytime they're learning anything, right? Any courses that they take, any books that they read, any skills they ever develop, when they are developing themselves, when they're taking care of themselves, they're developing their human capital. When they're eating healthy, when they're exercising, they are developing their human capital. So that is a part of the process. They are learning what they need. Sleep, maybe, right? Maybe study skills, maybe to make a plan, design the plan, work the plan. Those skills that they're learning help them grow in their human capital. So the next thing they learn as they're doing a passion project is how to develop their social capital. The social capital is working with others. It is teamwork. It is getting those volunteers to come on board with your great idea that you're turning around and blessing the community with. It is that iron sharpening iron and communicating your goal to others so that other people are coming on board with this project. So getting other people to volunteer their time as well to make your project come true is also just a life skill. These are life skills as well. The last one, and the one that's actually the hardest to develop, is called decisional capital. Decisional capital is like a muscle, learning how to make decisions, right? Learning how to make the decision of what passion project am I going to do, right? How am I going to make that happen? So there's just a lot of decisions that go involved with having a passion project. But developing somebody's decisional capital takes time, and they need to know in advance that they're going to make mistakes. Anytime you become a decision maker, you need to know in advance some are going to be good and some are going to be bad, and you're going to learn from the bad ones. Keep making decisions. You will become a stronger decision maker the more decisions that you make. So, quite a lot of decisions to be made. And this is something that is just my heartbeat as an educator. This is my why I do what I do, but it is also something that students really start learning through that, going through a passion project, is is learning about themselves, but learning the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So, a fixed mindset is a lie. It's a limiting belief that unfortunately a lot of high school students, as well as college students and adults, sometimes put themselves in a box. And what it means, this fixed mindset, is oh, I could never fill in the blank anything hard. Oh, I could never do that. I could never be that. I could never conquer SAT math. I could never be a brain surgeon. I could never be an astrophysicist, right? That simply means this fixed mindset that they don't have those skills now. And sometimes they don't have the maturity of knowing I could learn those skills. It may take time, may take a lot of different things, but I can learn anything. And that's the truth. So the fixed mindset students need to realize is themselves, putting themselves in a box. And it's not just about high school, it's life choices, right? And sometimes they think that, oh, I could never be a brain surgeon, right? Because they don't have those skills now. They can't currently do brain surgery now. They can't imagine what life would be like to be able to go do that fill in the blank anything hard. So the truth of the growth mindset is so freeing. It is so liberating because it lets students know that whatever that hard is, whatever that hard class they take in college, whatever life career choice they want to do, they can do it. They can learn it. And it is possible, it is doable. Now, it may take, and that's my message, you can learn anything. This is my heartbeat as an educator, that I want to communicate with every student that I ever have the privilege to work with. Because sometimes I feel like I'm more of a life coach or a confidence coach than a test prep professional. But I do want students to know that whatever the it is that they need to learn, that they can learn it. So the truth is, they might need more time than others. They might need a better curriculum, right? They might need study skills. They might need tutors. They might need teachers that are encourage questions of clarification, because as an educator myself, I know how important it is to encourage students to ask those questions of clarification. Because when you have a 17-year-old and in that one moment of time that they might care to get their question answered, yeah, they need to have a real person that they can go to be able to pose those questions. So questions of clarification are very, very important. So again, that growth mindset benefits a student for life. And this is just a little example of the fact that I'm currently getting my master's of education. Yes, after homeschooling for 18 years, I am getting my master's of education from Covenant College. I live right across the street from Covenant. My husband's the director of marketing there. So this is my shout out to Covenant College, which, by the way, is a sponsor for NCFCA. So any competitor that has made it to nationals has earned a $20,000 scholarship if they do attend Covenant College. I want to make sure I say that. But as I'm in the master's program, I just finished a constitutional law class that before class started, I was assigned to write 101 legal briefs. And I started hyperventilating because I don't know how to write a legal brief, and I don't know legalese, but I muddled through it. I read the entire court case, did a synopsis, and wrote the Supreme Court made this decision because they upheld this constitutional amendment. Sent it to my professor. He said, "You're good to go. Now write 100 more." So I have to tell myself this message of the growth mindset all the time when I'm going through the process of conquering hard. So now we're going to move into student resumes, and I'm going to be showing you a couple templates. I do think it's very important to write a student resume and turn it into the colleges that you're applying for, whether they ask for it or not. Why? Because it helps you stand out from the crowd. So a student resume tells their overall story of their high school experience, their academics, their extracurriculars, their NCFCA awards, and it's a professional way to tell your narrative, to tell your high school story. So um, a lot of times, student resumes are needed for organizations like the National Society of High School Scholars. Again, I'm going to come back around to that one as well, because a lot of high school families are not allowed to be members of the National Honor Society, and I'm a huge fan of the National Society of High School Scholars. But they do require student resumes when you apply for their private scholarships. And one word about letters of recommendation. I do recommend asking for 5. You're going to end up using 2. So the people you think are going to write stellar letters of recommendation for your child don't. Either they put it off to the last minute, or they're not a good writer, or they write good letters of recommendation, but not stellar. If you're going to win private merit-based scholarships, you need stellar letters of recommendation. So my advice would be to ask for 5 letters, and you'll end up using the 2. I'm not a fan of blind letters of recommendation because if you're going to be going for really big scholarships like the President Coolidge Scholarship, which is available for juniors, January of their junior year, I wouldn't want a letter that was written about my child that I hadn't seen being sent through. So if the recommender said, "Oh, I only do blind letters," I would recommend saying thank you very much and then continue looking for other people to write the letter recommendation. Your recommenders are going to be the ones that always send in the letter themselves. You're not the one sending it in. They send it in. I'm just saying that you get to read it in advance. This is just a sample. And again, we're not going to go through line item. I just want you to see the format of a student resume. This is not a good one, okay? This one doesn't stand out from the crowd. It's kind of off center. The student is referring to themselves as the next Bill Gates. No, I want to know what's special about William, right? Not that he wants to be like somebody else. I want to know what's special about him. But I would recommend using a template. Templates are available for free online at Canva. So I recommend using a template to make it more organized. And also his hobbies on here was watch TV, video games. There's nothing wrong with games if they're involved in esports and, if they have their place. But I think that it would be wise to showcase and explain your passion for things that you're interested in. So here's another sample. This one is good. It's a little bit more neat. But even at the bottom, it says the hobbies are writing and softball. I want to know more about Rachel. I want to know what is it about writing that you love? Why is that something that you're really interested in? So um, this is an example of a student who was an Eagle Scout and involved in speech and debate, involved in leadership in their club, and had a lot of words. I liked the part at the top where it said confident, adventurous, committed, and devoted to excellence. I thought that was good. I liked the visual with the eagle on there because it represented the fact he was an Eagle Scout. And I do know that the student ended up getting a full tuition scholarship. So I know enough about this particular student. Again, I mentioned that you can create the student resumes for free on Canva, and you can create a free account with your email address. So this is an example of just a template, right? And that you would find, and you'll be adding your information. These are just sample student resumes. So like that's a picture of my daughter, but that's not her name. So this is just an example of the template in action. I wouldn't recommend putting your scores on your student resume unless they were stellar. If they were super high scores, totally fine. But I don't normally recommend putting your ACT and SAT scores or your CLT exam as well on there. And I did like the profile. Her bio was a highly responsible high school student with exceptional focus, determination, organizational skills, and a proven record of results. I thought that was very good. It's just that could describe a lot of students. So I didn't think it was as specific to her, but it's very, very good. And it did lay out her education so it comes across very professional. Now, this is just personal choice. I like seeing a headshot of the student on the student resume, but my advice to you is look into the rules, right? Some scholarships are not allowing headshots on there, so always check the rules and know what would work best for your particular situation. Here's another example. This is actually a picture of my son, which I realized later he was 16 in this picture, so he's not even a senior in high school, but he's a little young there. But I loved the bio on here where it says, my value system is built upon a strong foundation of faith, integrity, excellence, and contribution. With a focused mind, love for learning and serving, I seek to impact the lives of others with compassion and solutions. I just thought that was a really good one because it was more specific and targeted to his desire. So I thought that was a good overall format. So hopefully you enjoyed seeing a couple styles. Now we're going to come into whether those test scores are still needed, and if you need to have your ACT, your SAT, or your CLT scores. Well, that kind of depends on your goals and where you're going and what colleges you're considering, and are they test optional, and do you need the financial aid packages to make it become reality? So, what I do know is that there are a lot of private Christian schools that are test optional. Covenant College is an example of that. And even though they are test optional for admittance, they did require an SAT score of a 1320 to be invited to Scholarship Weekend. If you were invited to Scholarship Weekend, you could apply for their 15 full tuition scholarships that they give away every year and their top financial aid packages on campus. So, in essence, if you're going to go to a private Christian school, you might need those scholarships to make it affordable and doable. So, it depends on your goals, but a lot of students do need to go after those merit based scholarships. So, again, I gave Covenant's example, and the specific scores needed were a 1320 SAT, ACT of 28, and a CLT of 90. Right? This is also just an example of the award packages, right, based on grades. They're not saying that the student would exactly get this scholarship. They're just saying other students that won this scholarship of the $20,000, which, by the way, is $20,000 per year, right? So it's an $80,000 scholarship over the course of the 4 years, would be for those students that have exceptional grades and really good scores. So, and again, the Founder Scholarship, 18,000, Tower Scholarship, 16,000, just examples. So I have a lot of people ask me, when is the ideal time to start the test prep journey? My personal opinion would be to start January of 10th grade. If you start in January of 10th grade, you have a 10-month window to be able to score their highest by fall of their junior year. So ideally, students are able to reach their highest score ever by October of their junior year so that they could potentially be in the running for the National Merit Scholarship, which they would qualify by taking the PSAT test. That's why when you are training for the SAT, you're training for the PSAT, because the PSAT is not any easier, it is simply shorter. So because these exams are currently in the very long format, they are changing spring of 2024, going to an online format where the exam is going to be closer to 2 hours, or 2 hours and like 20 minutes. But for all of those that are currently juniors and seniors that are going to be needing to get their scores now, these exams are closer to 4.5 hours long. My opinion, that is a marathon long test, to be actively engaged in that test for a long amount of time. And I just believe that just like athletes have to train their muscles to run a marathon, these students need to train their brain muscle to be actively engaged in a test for that long of amount of time. And because of that, it's good to start your test prep journey relatively early so they have time to get the scores they need. I wanted to come back around to that President Coolidge scholarship I mentioned earlier. That is only for high school juniors. And I know a lot of the debaters hopefully know about it because President Coolidge was a debater. It's highly, I think, would be poised well for a debater to win this scholarship. And it is, and I know a lot about scholarships. I'm kind of referred to as the scholarship lady. But this is by far my favorite because the President Coolidge Scholarship is a full tuition scholarship for all 4 years, including room and board, which I never see because that's a hard cost, to any college that the student chooses. They could choose, Princeton or some really expensive school that's like $85,000 a year, and they would pay for it. So no matter what school, the accredited school in America, the President Coolidge Scholarship would pay for it. So I will tell you there are only 2 winners per year that win that, so it is quite competitive, but I highly recommend going for it anyway because the process is very valuable. That process of getting organized and ready to apply for that scholarship by January of your junior year, setting that goal to hopefully reach your highest scores by that fall, Very, very valuable. Get those letters of recommendation ready, write your student resume, be ready to apply for that. They also have the Coolidge Senators. So 100 students win a trip to DC and other smaller scholarships. So it is certainly worthwhile to go for the President Coolidge Scholarship. And I did also already mention about the national merit, but I'll just go ahead and clarify that it is the qualifying scores on the PSAT. And you also have to have confirmation scores on the real SAT. And what that means is they just want to make sure it wasn't a fluke. So if you do score really high on the PSAT your junior year, you have to have confirmation scores on the real SAT. And that's one of the reasons that I am recommending starting in January of sophomore year so that you're prepping all the way through October. And the student takes both the PSAT and the SAT that October. Just warn them in advance. They might be a little um, brain tired of testing in October, but it's ideal to get those scores then so that you already have those confirmation scores. And again, for National Merit, there's 3 different levels of being a National Merit Scholar. There's commended, semifinalist, and finalist. And to become a National Merit Finalist, many schools, that's like a $2,500 scholarship, but also many schools do offer a full tuition scholarship for those students that become National Merit Finalists. Okay. And as far as coaching, it's kind of a relatively new thing. I do believe back in the early 2000s, it was probably only families that were looking to get in more competitive schools that were using test prep and coaching. Until the College Board noticed that, they were saying, "Oh, no need to prep. Just come take a cold. No need to prep." But in 2017, they did kind of change their tune and came out and said, "You know what?" After they looked at the data that those who get coached have significant score increases, they did come out and say, "You know what? Coaching is a good idea. Test prep is a good idea. We need to help families be ready for that." And I know that College Board has connected with Khan Academy for test prep. And I really respect Khan Academy as an educator. Free education for the world, I think, is amazing, and I respect it. However, there's no support. There's no chat box. There's no phone support. There's no email support. So when you do have that 17-year-old who cares for one moment of time to get their question answered, I believe they need a real person to contact. There's also many times a disconnect between the math problem and the video clip that they're showing that tends to frustrate a lot of students. And I don't want students to become frustrated. So I do believe that for many students, they need more accountability and they do become frustrated if that's their only way. So again, the quote that was in the Washington Post was, "Can coaching truly boost scores?" For years, the College Board said no. Now it says yes. So again, back to my story with my 3 children. They were straight A students. I am a classical educator. I had taught Latin for 14 years, and all 3 of my children had taken Latin between 7 and 9 years. So they were pretty solid on their reading comprehension and writing and language. However, the math scores, even though we went through calculus in high school, they were scoring around national average on these tests, and I wasn't sure why they were scoring around national average or below. And it took me a while to figure it out. And it really is the fact that, not to diminish grades, because grades are very, very important. And grades show work ethic, and GPA is important. However, there is a difference between being in a class, say they're in Algebra 2, and they've been on Chapter 9 for 3 weeks. And when it comes time for the test, if they've done their homework and they've been up to date on the material in that chapter, and it comes time for the test and they do their brain dump, they're more than likely going to do better on those concepts because those skills are fresh in their mind. Unlike a college entrance exam where the skills are so diverse. I'm just using SAT as an example. I do teach all the tests, and I'm about to start teaching the CLT as well. But the SAT, for example, covers on the math section, covers 40% arithmetic. The remaining 60% is mostly algebra, but also covers geometry and trig concepts as well. I have so many students that'll say, "Mrs. Horton, I never learned mode," or "I never learned box plots." More than likely, it is not a gap in their education. It is simply that they forgot that the vertical line in that box plot is the median. So there's just a lot of details. There's a lot of things that they have forgotten and they need a reminder. So that is why I do believe that students need to flush through those practice tests and uh, have a lot more practice. Uh, what the status quo is that students think they just need to run 4 to 6 practice tests, jump on Khan Academy a little bit. Sadly, that's not true. That's not enough. The truth is, it's much harder and it takes much longer for students to have significant score increases. Usually, students need to flush through those practice tests 20 times. Now, I know that's a lot. It is a lot. It also works. So, if your students are scoring around national average and they need to win scholarships, I'm telling you that most students need to flush through those practice tests 20 times to make sure that they feel confident and prepared, that they are a prepared test taker, because most students are not prepared. The reason we know that is because in the state of Florida, again, most students are trying to win bright futures. And we know that only 15% of those students are scoring a 12, 10, or higher. So, what does that tell us? It tells us that 85 out of 100 students are not scoring a 12, 10. Okay? It just means that that 85% are probably running the 4 to 6 practice tests, right? And jumping on Khan Academy a little bit. So I do believe that most students need to prep more than they are currently prepping to be able to reach their personal goals and to be confident on test day. And that's what I want. So again, I just did that part about the 85. This is an example. I do, again, teach both tests, but if you haven't decided which test you're going to choose, ACT or SAT, I highly recommend the SAT for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's one less subject. You don't need to work on prepping for the science section, which, by the way, is not base knowledge of biology, chemistry, and physics. It is actually asking some students to extrapolate out potential meanings. So I don't believe that as an educator, I like testing a student on a skill that they haven't necessarily been taught. And that's kind of challenging for a lot of adults to do as well. So the other thing is that most students need help the most on the math, and the math is actually 29% more time on the SAT. And a lot of people don't know that. So again, the ACT, 60 math questions, 60 seconds per question. But with the SAT currently, in its current state, it's 2 different sections. Section 3 is 75 seconds, so additional 15 seconds. And then section 4, which is the calculator section, is 87 seconds per problem. That is 27 seconds longer than the ACT math problems. So you might be thinking, that's just 27 seconds. But trust me, it accumulates and it really does help the student. So uh, moving on, again, I mentioned that I recommend flushing through those practice tests. As a test prep professional, I am a member of the National Test Prep Association. That simply means that I am a legit test prep professional because I receive ongoing training through the National Test Prep Association. At our summits and our masterminds, we will deconstruct the tests each time they are released. For example, it is a legal requirement for a College Board to release the test questions 3 times a year, March, May, and October. So if you're going to choose the months for your child to take the test, I highly recommend taking it March, May, and October. They will really like being able to go into their dashboard when they get their scores back and pull up the exact test questions. So I've had students that took the test in March and maybe they took it again in June. And then June, they're like, you mean I can't go see those questions? Why? I'm like, because they're not available. But this service is called the QAS. It stands for the Question and Answer Service. It does cost an additional $18, but I do highly recommend it. Please don't confuse it with the SAS, which tells you whether the question is easy, medium, or hard, which actually tells you nothing. Because what's hard for one student is easy for another, and they give such a broad overview. They'll say, oh, that question is medium, and the skill is algebra. It's just too diverse. So it's just not enough information. So I don't recommend the SAS, but the QAS is definitely a service that is very, very valuable. And again, the students can pull up the exact test questions. I also don't recommend using a test prep curriculum. There's a lot of curriculums out there, and there's sadly a message going around the homeschool community that this is just a logic test, and it's a probability test. You could just look at the question and answer it. That is true for a very few number of questions. This is not a logic test, it is a skill based test. I know for sure. It's what I do every day in and day out. ACT test and SAT test. I am here to tell you that the writing and language section is testing concise, clear writing as well as grammar. The reading comprehension section, which should be renamed because that implies that students should read every word and comprehend every word they read, should be renamed in how to skim this reading passage and to go back read to get to the correct answer. Because the goal is always the correct answer. Get to the correct answer as fast as possible. That is always the goal for these exams. So I recommend only using ACT materials or College Board materials or CLT materials when it comes to test prep. There is no reason to buy a curriculum to work through it or to walk in Barnes and Noble and you'll see a plethora of test prep materials like Barron's, Princeton Review, Kaplan, all of those materials. Because when they are writing their test questions, when they are writing their practice tests, they're thinking, now how would College Board word this systems of equations problem? I just think that that's not needed because of the fact that College Board put out 10 free practice tests online for free. You can just Google SAT Practice Test 1, SAT Practice Test 5. It comes up in a PDF format. Students can print it off and go ahead, and it's portable. It's easy to take with them. Attempt the problems in advance, come to a coaching session, and be coached through each and every question. So my sessions are 2 hours long because I want number one, it just takes 2 hours to go through each and every one of the 58 math problems and to explain the procedure. So we're either on the reading comprehension and writing and language on one night, or we are on the math section that night. And I want students to get a little bit tired and have to work through it. But even the problems that they got right in advance of the class, I want to coach through it because sometimes they got it right, but they have no idea what the skill is, right? Or they solved it the long mathematical way. And I can show them a more efficient way to get to the correct answer. I can show them a shortcut that's going to save them time. But at the end of the day, what sets me apart from other coaches is that I am super clear on the name of that skill. I want students to be able to look at each and every math question and be able to name the skill. So an easy one would be distribution and adding like terms. So even the name of that skill, you distribute and then you add the like terms, helps a student know what to do because the setup, setting up the procedure is the hardest part. Doing the math, not quite so hard, but doing the setup is what takes time. 20 sessions for a student to walk away knowing I know exactly what to do. And I love having confident test takers. All right, so if somebody is going to go with me, I do currently offer 2 different options. I do group classes, which are half price, and I do recommend group classes, and I also do private coaching. I used to think private coaching was better, one-on-one. I don't believe that anymore because of the fact in the past 2 to 3 years, I've seen it happen over and over and over again in my small group classes where a student will ask a question and another student will say, oh, I didn't know that either. It keeps happening over and over. And so I feel like there's this synergy involved in the small group classes that really benefits the students. So I believe that is the best. And
What I love about Mrs. Horton's test prep is that she teaches us every skill, formula, and shortcut for each type of question so that we can complete it as fast as possible. She teaches it's not a logic test, it's a skill based test. So, with a lot of hard work and consistent test prep, I have managed to earn my Bright Future Scholarship. Thank you so much, Mrs. Horton.
Hi, my name is Emmy, and I'm Mrs. Horton's student. I went to one of Mrs. Horton's SAT workshops when I was just getting started with test prep, and I loved it. I used Mrs. Horton's approach to the SAT, scored in the top 1% in the nation, and I just found out that I earned a perfect PSAT score. Thank you so much, Mrs. Horton.
all right. You're welcome to stop by my table if you have any questions to ask me later, or you can scan this just to get in my system. I do actually put out information about scholarships. If you're on Instagram, follow Horton Test Prep. I put out test prep questions as well as I'm constantly putting out more and more information about scholarships because I'm such a huge fan. Oh, for some more people trying to get that. I definitely want to help encourage students to find the right scholarship for them. On my website, I have my link tree. It's also in the bio on Instagram. What I like to put out on my link tree is information on how families can lower their EFC. If you don't know what that is, it's your estimated family contribution. You will definitely know what that number is. It is a very, very valuable number. And if there's any ways that you can lower your EFC, your estimated family contribution, I highly recommend it. But if you go to my website, it's all live links. It just makes it easier for you. Um, to click on that link. There's a free video, that college funding education. This is not my business, but I just know he's legit. I highly recommend him. And then I also have that honor society that I mentioned, the National Society of High School Scholars. Okay, their kind of message went around homeschoolers that it's a scam. It is not. I highly recommend it. Um, two of my daughters applied for scholarships and won $1,000 through them, and the money went directly to their college of choice. So it is a legit organization. They also have conferences and study abroad programs. A lot of times the CIA will come into their events and want to encourage students to apply for their internship. So the National Society of High School Scholars does cost $75 to join, but I do highly recommend it. And then one other scholarship I absolutely love that is on my link tree is the Distinguished Young Women Scholarship. Both of my daughters went through it, really, really enjoyed it. They give away millions of dollars every year. Again, it's on the link. And you apply somewhere between your junior year and senior year of high school, and you compete your senior year. So my oldest daughter won 21,000 through them. My middle daughter won around 3,500 through them. So I highly recommend it. And if you work for the Walt Disney Company, I recommend, or any of their affiliates, ABC or all of those, I recommend applying for the Disney Scholar as well. And, oh, I already mentioned him. He's on my link tree to find it. And if you're going to apply for a competitive school, I recommend getting an IEC, an independent educational consultant that's going to help you through the process of getting accepted to a more competitive school. This is just some top 2 skills. That's a downloadable thing that is also on my website that you can go after. College Board tests the same skills over and over and over again. So I do highlight 2 important skills, and I show it in an easy math problem, a medium hard problem, and a hard problem. So you can check out those skills. Really quickly, as I close, this is a picture of my daughter, Haley, and I just wanted to mention that she is an artist. She was an artist from age 4 on, and she informed us second semester senior year, let that sink in, second semester senior year, right before we printed her graduation announcement cards, that she wanted to double major in art and physics. And I'm thinking, okay, sure, that's great. And so that's what we wrote on her graduation announcement cards. And so she goes off to college, and within a short amount of time, she decides she wants to drop art and major in physics, which was a little bit of a shock, but so exciting. But she said, "Mom, I'm always going to be an artist. I'm going to be an artist for the day I die. You know, I'm always going to love art, but I really want to study and do something different, something new." And so I wanted to share that story only because I do believe that she believed she could. She had that growth mindset of, this is hard. I've heard it's hard, but I can conquer hard. And she is currently an astrophysicist and works for Dynetics in Huntsville, Alabama. And I just want to say, please stop by my table, Horton Test Prep. And did we have time or not?
We do. We have time to take just a couple questions. So if you have a question for Leah, we'll come around with the microphone.
I'm just wondering if you know of any other websites where you can go to get a lot of information about scholarships that are
Yes.
available.
Yes, I do. And I'm about to be adding another one to my link tree, but bold.org has a bunch. But the thing about like scholarships.com, where you just apply to a scholarship and you never hear back from them, you just feel like you're putting it out into the internet, right? The thing about the National Society of High School Scholars, if you become a member, only members can apply for the scholarships within there. I do want you to know you'll look on the member board and you'll see, oh, wow, there's 300,000 members. That's a ton of members, right? But my children are still members. they never take anybody off because they want those people to be members for life. So there's not that many active high school students applying for the scholarships. And they have so many now. There's art scholarships, there's athlete scholarships, there's debate scholarships. There's just so many, and it's a smaller pool of people going for it. So I just wrote a letter of recommendation for one of my students from speech and debate from Legacy for Christ, and he applied for it, and he just won a $2,500 scholarship through National Society of High School Scholars because I wrote him a stellar letter of recommendation. It really does matter. Any other questions?
I know you talked about your preference for the SAT over the ACT, but could you talk a little bit about how that relates to different schools, or how, like, going into it when you don't know your school options yet? And being
I
we're
might
from the
let the
Midwest
colleges address that question, but I have found usually colleges accept both exams. And a lot of the private Christian liberal arts schools are also accepting the CLT as well. And sometimes it's good to take both tests just to see which one, the student is better at, or which one they want. At the end of the day, it's whichever one they're willing to prep for. So, any other questions?
Can you tell me if there's a difference in the schools that don't accept federal funds? Are the scholarships looked at differently? Are scholarships not available for schools like that?
Okay, again, that's probably a college question for them to answer. They maybe know that more than I would.
The just finished my junior year, so I got an email from the National Society of High School Scholars. I looked at the scholarships that they have, but they all had already happened. Like, do they happen again next year?
Yes.
Or so I haven't missed them. I can do it next year.
You're a rising senior, or are you just graduating?
Next year is my senior year.
Yeah, you're rising senior. Yes. Actually, most scholarships are for high school seniors. Just go ahead and be ready. Get those letters of recommendation ready. Ask for the 5, choose your 2, right? And then this is also something important. Go ahead and once you choose your 2 that are really good, usually a character reference and an academic reference, but then ask them for their permission. Say, you know what? I need to apply for a lot of scholarships to make this happen for me. Is it okay for you to upload that letter you wrote that one time multiple times? And as soon as you get that yes from them, then you have full freedom, and I want to encourage you to use it. This one student I wrote the letter for, he's been applying for a ton of scholarships, and it is my pleasure to take that letter and upload it each time. So don't think to yourself, oh, I don't want to impose on them because I already asked them to write that letter. I'll just use it one time. No. They want you to succeed. They want you to get accepted to your dream school. They want you to win scholarships. So apply for a lot of scholarships. And the only reason we were able to accumulate that many private merit-based scholarships is because we applied for so many.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have a guide for writing a stellar recommendation?
That is a great question. I probably should. I create one because I've just seen some really poorly written letters, and from people you'd think would write a great one. So, yeah, I'll consider putting a sample of what I think is a stellar letter of recommendation. So it just needs to be something that makes the scholarship committee go, wow, or these wonderful college admissions people go, wow, that student stands out from the crowd, right? You want to read that letter and go, they stood out. That's your goal.
So if the letter of recommendation, if you ask the person and then they're responsible for sending it directly there,
Yes, they will send it.
how do you then? It feels awkward to then say, "Can I see it?" or "Can I have it?"
Okay,
Like,
you asked for
how
that
does
in
that work?
advance.
What'd
You
say?
asked to see it in advance before it
And
gets sent on.
Is that okay, or is that like
Yes. You control it. You're the homeschool mom. You can control anything you want to
So
control.
you say
You
send
are
it in
empowered.
advance, but then I want to see it before you send it?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then what if you decide, like, you recommended 5, but you only
Well,
sent
you don't
2?
tell them what it's for. You just say, I want you to write a letter of recommendation for my child, right?
Okay.
And you could, later come back around and say specifics if you want that specific written on the letter, but it doesn't really have to be on,
Okay.
the whatever specific.
Okay, and then if
I
you
think it's actually better for it not to have the exact name of the scholarship on that particular letter, because it makes it easier for that educator or that recommendation person to take that exact same letter and keep uploading it, uploading it, uploading. At the end of the day, the scholarship committees and the college admissions people, they just want to know what's special about this student. And they don't necessarily need to see the name of their specific scholarship on the letter. So what I'm saying is ask for the letter in advance so that you get to choose which ones that you're going to say, oh, will you upload this to Anderson University?
And
Will
then-
you upload this to
So
wherever?
follow up, if you ask for 5 and then you don't select theirs, do you just, or do you say, or how do you handle that after the fact?
You don't really even need to handle it. They're going to send it to you, and you either use it or don't use it, right? So it's not offensive for somebody to go, oh, okay, well, they didn't use it. They're not sitting around thinking about it. It doesn't really matter.
My question is pretty close to what she was asking. Is like, for example, for the national merit, like if you become a national merit semi-finalist, then you have to apply for the finalist.
Right.
You have to send a letter of recommendation. Then in this case, like it goes direct from the professor, the teacher, whatever
Right,
that you
always
ask,
does. Goes.
to send directly to national merit. So in a case like that, it's kind of like tricky, because you have to choose one person, and then how do you go about and say, hey, can you write a recommendation letter and send direct to them, but you don't see the letter before,
But that's what I'm saying. This is just Leah Lemaster Horton's personal opinion, my personal opinion, and why I think I was successful in helping my own children win so many scholarships was because I did control everything. I did know in advance, right? I did ask for the letter in advance to see it so that I chose the 2 best ones. So then I went to them and said, can you upload this letter to the National Merit Scholarship?
So you would recommend choose like 5 people and then ask them to send a copy, and then you choose which one you want them to send. Is
Right.
it
They're sending it to you, right?
Okay.
Just so that you can read it. Now, different people have different opinions, and there are certainly people that you're going to ask to be write a letter of recommendation, and they will say, "No, I only do blind letters." So that's your choice. Then you can say, "Great, you can write a blind letter for my child." I'm saying that I would rather be knowledgeable of what's being written about my child so that I can choose the best letters. So, but know in advance, people are going to say no. They're going to say, "Oh, I only do blind." I'm simply saying ask for 5, right? Get them back. You choose the 2 best ones.
Leah, we thank you so very, very much. And if
My
people
pleasure.
have additional,
Go ahead.
you have additional questions for Leah, she will be at her dinner table in Billy Graham, so you're welcome to stop back there. And at this time, I'm going to invite our college admissions folks to come forward, and they're going to share a little bit about their schools, and then also give you an opportunity to ask them questions about what they're looking for and their tips for college admissions. So I'm going to start on the West Coast and move east, which means that we're first going to start with Eric Mishney from Cedarville University.
Is Cedarville on the West Coast?
Yeah, it's the furthest west that we have.
Ohio? Okay. And I thought being in the Midwest was confusing sometimes. But I am Eric Mishney. I'm the director of forensics at Cedarville University. I am not a part of the admissions department. So some of your questions that you might have, I will say I will find out and get back to you. But I can speak broadly to the scholarships that Cedarville has. I like to categorize them into 5 different categories. There's the first is the presidential academic scholarship that absolutely everyone who is accepted to the university is eligible for and will receive something for. It's between $10,000 and $20,000, and it's based on your academic accomplishments. The second one is the need-based scholarship that is the FAFSA, essentially. If you submit the FAFSA, you are eligible to get something for that need-based scholarship. Then there's some more specific ones. There's a whole bunch of individual scholarships that students can apply for individually, ranging from diversity scholarships to mission family scholarships if you are part of a missionary family, or I think there's even pastors' kids specific scholarships, which is cool too. So there's a lot of individual scholarships you can apply for that are broadly for the university. Then there's departmental scholarships, and depending on the department, the major you're going into, each department has scholarships that are eligible for folks in that major also. And the last one are program specific, so even more specific than just being in a major. If you are a worship major doing worship things at Cedarville, there's a specific scholarship for that. If you're in athletics, there's scholarships for that. If you're on the speech and debate team, no matter what your major is, there's scholarships that are eligible that you're eligible for being on the speech and debate team. And those are things that's the one that I can talk to the most. But almost all of those I think are renewable every year, and they range widely from a couple $100s to like I said, $20,000, $30,000 depending on the scholarship that you're going for. There's a huge range in those, and the requirements are very specific and explicit on our website. I can direct you to that if you want. All of the expectations for those scholarships are right there.
Eric, I'm going to ask you one additional question.
Sure.
Why do you choose to work for Cedarville University?
I was an undergraduate there. I did my undergrad there. I spent 5 years there. I couldn't get enough, I guess. I changed my major my junior year. That's really what it was. But I loved it, and I felt comfortable there, and so I went back to work there because that was home. I have family there, so that was certainly a part of it. But there is such a focus at Cedarville on your spiritual walk. We have chapel 5 days a week that is required, and so there is. Some people don't like that. Most people love it, actually. I'm surprised at how many students just love going to required chapel every day. And you will not find a place. You will find a place. There are other places that are equally as good. But what I mean is, one of the distinct characteristics of Cedarville is the constant spiritual growth that is happening, not just because of chapel, but because of the emphasis that each professor puts on integrating their faith into the classroom, and the dorm life and the RAs. Everything centers around growing as a strong Christian individual, and that is being a part of that from a faculty perspective is absolutely amazing.
So I overheard you speaking to someone in the room earlier, and you said, "I've stopped saying I'm going to work." Can you just tell our friends about that?
Yeah, I love my job. Like, how else do you say that? I absolutely love my job. I don't feel like, besides the silly administrative garbage that I have to do now and then, like recording grades, but I love my job. I don't tell my wife that I'm going to work. I tell her I'm going to campus because I just love it. And I get the feeling that most of my colleagues feel that way too. And I think that working in a place where it doesn't feel like you're doing work is amazing. And I guarantee you the students benefit from that perspective of the faculty too.
Okay, now I fully admit that geography was not my strong suit. So from this point forward, we may be out of order, but we're going to go right down the row. So next we have Maddie Carter from Anderson University.
Hi, everybody. I know some of y'all may have been on Anderson's campus in the past. We hosted NCFCA Nationals back in 2019. We loved having everybody there. And then last year we had regionals. This year we were so sad that we didn't get to host anything. We love our NCFCA students. I've gotten to see a couple of students here that were just this past year were freshmen at Anderson, and then there are a couple of students who are competing this week that are going to be freshmen this fall. So we absolutely love our students from NCFCA. So just a little bit about Anderson. Anderson is located in the upstate of South Carolina. It is a small private Christian school. Our undergraduate is right under 3,000 students. With graduate, it's right under 4,000. We are constantly growing. We are one of the fastest growing private Christian universities. And the amazing thing is that even with that growth, they have still been able to maintain our core values. So really the four things that make Anderson stand out are our four pillars. So when you think of a building and what holds up the building are those four pillars. So you have great faith, great academics, great purpose, and great hospitality. My personal favorite of those four is the great hospitality. I think it's really what makes Anderson stand out. from the time I stepped foot on campus, I was visiting my mom, who is a professor at Anderson. And I went to a basketball game and met the president and his wife. And just seeing the fact that the president and his wife and other faculty and students were all there supporting their friends on the basketball team, it just feels like a family. From the time you step foot on campus touring to being a student there, it's just, you feel like you're part of God's kingdom and you feel like you're supported in whatever you want to go into. We have a number of different majors, ranging from our largest college is the College of Health Professions. So, really, really strong nursing and kinesiology. We also have a very large College of Education, College of Arts and Sciences, business, interior design. We are one of the only Christian interior design programs in the country. We also have Homeland Security, cybersecurity, and our South Carolina School of the Arts has visual and performing arts. So when it comes to scholarships, there are a ton of scholarships. So you heard a little bit about how, of course, the FAFSA is going to be able to tell you your need-based versus maybe your typical student loans. Within just Anderson as an institution, we have a number of different scholarships. So automatically, any student who is from outside of the state of South Carolina gets $3,000. We understand that there are perks to staying in the state that you are from. And while we can't meet those exact perks, we want to give something because we love the diversity that we have on campus. And so you automatically get $3,000 just from being outside of South Carolina. NCFCA national competitors automatically get $1,000. So any student that is at nationals during their high school career is going to be able to get that $1,000. And then on top of that, we have quite a few merit scholarships. So our automatic merit scholarships are going to look at things like GPA and then either test score or class rank. So because with our homeschool students, class rank is not always an option, that is where test score is going to come into play. We do look at all 3 test scores, SAT, ACT, and CLT. We love CLT. I wish that CLT had existed when I was in high school. I went to a small private classical Christian school. I had 17 classmates and I took Latin for 7 years, and the CLT would have been my best friend. So I am so glad that students have access to that. So for our automatic merit scholarships, those can range from $6,500 to $15,000 a year based off of what level students meet. And then we have some competitive scholarships. So our highest competitive scholarship is called the Fellows Scholarship Program. We've had a couple NCFCA students compete in that. And if a student has a 3.5 GPA with a 1200, a 27, or an 82, they are able to compete. And basically what happens, they apply using, it's a brief essay that we give a prompt for, 2 letters of recommendation, and a resume. So as we heard earlier, how to get those great letters of recommendation and resume, students are able to use those, and then we invite a certain number on campus for interviews with our faculty and staff. And it can range from a full tuition to full tuition room and board scholarship. Outside of that, we also have some diversity scholarships for students who come from different ethnic or different backgrounds. We also have some School of the Arts scholarships that come with some auditions. And then, a couple of other ones. If any student is part of the Baptist, if they go to a Baptist church, they get an automatic scholarship. So there's quite a few, and all of it stacks. So all of it is going to add up to give a student that big package, and it will renew from year to year as well.
Okay, Maddie, tell me what one of the funnest events is on the campus of Anderson University.
Ooh, that's really hard. Anderson has a lot of really fun traditions. I think one of the most probably well-renowned traditions that maybe some NCFCA families know about is Mrs. Whitaker's cookies.
Yes.
So during our finals week with both semesters, Mrs. Whitaker bakes cookies for every single student on campus. And it becomes kind of a team effort because some people from other offices, I get to be part of it too. We all get to put those cookies together to be able to set out for the students. During Christmas time, she invites students over to their house and she has literally 200 nutcrackers that she decorates their house with. And so students are able to take a study break and go to her house and have milk and cookies with the president and his wife. And nothing says, we believe in you, finish your exams, like a fresh baked chocolate chip cookie. So I think that's a really, really special tradition.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. And next up, we have Josiah Coyle joining us from Regent University.
Hey, how you guys doing? I guess she already said my name, but again, I'm Josiah Coyle. I'm from Regent University. I can't say how many times this week I've been asked what region I'm from,
Yes. Yes.
why exactly that is. But a little bit about myself. When I was 6, I swallowed a slug. The reason I bring that up is because I was actually drinking out of a hose in our backyard after playing string ball with my dad, which was preparing me for his dream of lifelong baseball for me to play, which I didn't. And now I sit here before you. The reason why that's important is because you guys, raise your hand if you have ever tried to drink out of a hose. Has anybody? All right, so you know the feeling. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Hopefully you had a different experience than mine. But the reason that we are here, there's 2 things that we're trying to do. Is number 1, keep you from having to drink out of a fire hose on the last semester that your student is in school while you try to scrape details together on colleges, see how to get them into the college that they decide they want. We want to provide all of the options for you. So, in response to the half-stated claim that you're not going to find a better school than Cedarville earlier,
Sparring words.
so we actually, so we're actually, that's so what Mrs. I'm sorry. Actually, I was referring to the college prep speaker,
Oh, Mrs. Horton.
Mrs. Horton. Sorry, the names of the students, which are not actually your children on the screen, mixed me up a little bit. So, but what she's trying to do is help you figure out how to represent your child to colleges to make sure that they know that your child is the best fit for them. Because we all know that they are the best fit. You just need help sometimes making sure that they know that. What we're trying to do is not say that one of us is better than the others or anything, but we're trying to help you determine which college is the best fit for your child because you want to establish both of those things. So I'm just going to briefly talk about 3 things, background about Regent. And number 1 is going to be academics because you go to college to learn, hopefully. Number 2 is spiritual life because obviously you want an education that benefits your child's spiritual life. And number 3 is financial aid because clearly you have a vested interest in that if you're sitting here talking about and listening about scholarships. So you care about all 3 of these things. Number 1 is academics. Regent University is accredited at the highest level. We are very transfer friendly, both in and out, hopefully more in than out. But we have an A-rated program, Bible College Online. I'm sorry, that's incredibly vague. We have been ranked, we've been given an A rating by numerous foundations and 30 third parties recommendations for colleges. Bible College Online has ranked us as one of the top Christian universities. In fact, the top national university for online studies. To clarify, we have both online and on-campus opportunities for students. So if you aren't quite ready for your student to go away to college, they could stay for college and do that online. The reason I bring that up is because that gives us a few advantages. For instance, we have a relatively small on-campus population. So if you want your child to be lost in the crowd and for professors to never know them or be able to connect with them, it is probably not the place for you because our professors and the other students are going to um, give an opportunity for a close, tight knit community that you really can't get when nobody really knows anybody. But for online, um, our student demographic is much larger. So we have the community opportunities on campus of a small school, while we also have the resources of a much larger school. We also have grad programs, law programs. I'm in one of them myself. My wife is also in a psychology program. So I can speak to the academic rigor of Regent University. Number two is spiritual life, because you, like I said previously, you want your child to go to a school where their faith is going to be built upon rather than whack a mole from every side. And Regent University has what we call faith integration. And it's the idea that your academics should be built on a biblical worldview. Because unfortunately, many people in the world today, Christians included, have an inconsistent worldview where they believe intellectually one thing, but personally they hold another belief. And these two are a contradiction in terms. And we don't want that, because we want to produce fully formed Christian leaders from Regent University who understand their academic pursuits tie into God's plan for their life. And so we want to prepare them to understand what they believe, why they believe it, and be able to clearly explain it to other people. I'm judging by the crowd here that most of your students care a lot about clearly explaining things to strangers, even in certain time restraints. So then the last thing is financial aid, and you've heard a lot about it. Their financial aid can be intricate, but there are three basic types of financial aid. There's federal aid, which is the FAFSA, which was mentioned previously. Won't go into too many details about that, but I will say that I highly recommend your student should go to studentaid.gov and fill that out if they haven't, once they go to college. That is your first financial aid step, no matter where you go, because that's federal and it applies all across the board. The second is state aid. We have some state aid scholarships. As the more astute of you may have deduced, state aid comes from the state. So that is when a state has a vested interest in people who are being educated there, also benefiting the state through that education. So we are in Virginia Beach, Virginia. We have numerous state benefits, but we also have no out-of-state tuition if you are from a state other than Virginia. So, and then finally, there's institutional aid, which athletic scholarships were mentioned. That would be a form of institutional aid, and we have institutional aids as well. In the interest of not saying a very similar thing as previous sharers, I would just say that we have all of that information online. You can go to regent.edu and you can look at more specifics than I would be able to convey to you in the next 30 seconds between now and when I hand the microphone to a random person that comes by to get it, hopefully. And finally, there's just all around financial aid, and that is, we believe that it's important to keep the cost of education low so that you don't have to go through a bunch of hoops to try to achieve as many scholarships as you can, just so you don't go broke getting your child a higher education. So we are in the top 5% most affordable private Christian colleges in the United States. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my, as brief as possible, synopsis to help you not drink out of a fire hose. Thank you.
But Josiah, I'm going to ask you one more question.
Absolutely.
So there is a distinctive about Regent that I have noticed. So can you tell our friends about your dorms?
Our dorms are all, that is a great question. Thank
They
you.
don't have them. That was a trick question. So what do you have?
Actually, we do have dorms.
But they are.
Our dorms are all apartment style with a fully functioning kitchen, because Regent actually started out as a grad school, and grad students, obviously, it's very important that they have a place where they can fix their own meals and choose what they want to eat. And so all of our dorms have fully functioning kitchens. We have award-winning dorms, and I won't tell you exactly what they are ranked. The number that pops into my head is 8, but don't quote me on that, because normally people just get the idea after I say fully functioning kitchen.
The line that I remember from our tour is, "We're not raising teenagers, we're raising adults." And that's a part of life, right? Is learning how to prepare your meals and take care of that and go to the grocery store and balance your budget. So I found that really interesting about Regent.
It is something that that students actually love that because it's a chance for them to prepare themselves for life in the adult world. I don't know how many of you have sons in here, sons, and I will say, as a young married man, knowing how to cook a few things goes a long way. That's all I'll say about it. So, thank you.
All right. Well, Stephen, we go back a few years, and Stephen is from Patrick Henry, one of our legacy partner, and so he's going to come and he has a few slides to share with you. Come on up. Yep.
Down button. Great. Thank you, Amy Joy, and thank you all for listening to all of us here. Just we're all buddies in the Christian college sphere too, which is so neat. And we're all a little sad when we lose students to each of us, over the years. But I'm always grateful they stay in the Christian college sphere. Honestly, just as you were saying about whack-a-mole, education. These 4 years are formative years. At 18, some people are ready for that next step, to take on the world. I don't think many are. And as great as even national champions of NCFCA are, they've got those 4 formative years, the most formative years of your life, data shows, to be formed and shaped. Like our president uses the analogy of a drying sidewalk, a wet cement sidewalk. And what impressions do you want on your 18 to 22-year-old in the most formative psychological time of their lives? And that's what we think about at Patrick Henry. So very similar to my friends here, we have 3 commitments that we hold no matter what at Patrick Henry. And we're also younger than the 3 of them in pretty much all the colleges in the world. We're 22 years old, and so we were able to look in the 90s, how did colleges set themselves up? And who are they? And how could we be different? One of the things is they all said they're small. They're not small like PHC. We're 400 students. So it's like an honors college size with our intentional student body. One of the things is we don't have all the majors a lot of these colleges have. They have a lot of majors. And we decided to keep it concentrated. And we don't have different schools. Anderson's got a lot of cool schools. We've got concentrated things in the applied liberal arts, classical liberal arts, and government. Those are our 3 areas, and we want leaders to be shaped and molded in those areas. And so all of PhD can be diffused down to 3 commitments. Number 1, high academic rigor. Starts with a unique core curriculum that no other college has in America. Number 2, fidelity to the spirit of the American founding. Not that it was perfect, but the spirit of what they were doing was different. And you go and visit other countries, you see it pretty much immediately, right? That our country is different, even in its broken state right now, I believe. And it feels like we're going down the tubes. There's a lot of hope, right? We're seeing it at this tournament, right? Every nationals I go, there's the future, there's the hope. And we want to mold and shape that. So that's number 2, fidelity to the spirit of the American founding. Number 3 is unwavering biblical worldview. In a time where a lot of colleges are wavering, or like a lot of our competitors are bringing up unbiblical worldviews into our students, right? And into our young people. And like I said, they might be able to go into the fray, but I'd rather not risk that with a soul, all right? And so that's why we exist at Patrick Henry. If you want to read more about that, you can go to our formula on the website and read about our distinctives. We've got a lot of neat things. Of course, our forensic program is awesome. We love filling it with NCFCA students. We're the top Christian forensics program in America. We've got 12 national moot court titles, 1 civic debate national title, and 2 top 10 mock trial finishes in the last 2 years. So we want to fill our programs with your students. And we have 12 here competing at nationals this year. That'll be coming this fall, which is super exciting. So what I want to do is a little fusion with Ms. Horton here, actually, and give you a few pillars of what we look for at PHC. I only have a couple minutes here, but I'll give you just—
I told him 6.
Yeah, 6. So I've already taken up half of that probably. But I wanted to show you a few pillars of college prep. What do we look for in a Patrick Henry College student in an application? A lot of these probably overlap too with my buddies here. So I've got 2 different sides. I'm going to pull them both up for time here. You've got academics and over here, right? Academics and spiritual walk. Those are the things we look for in our students, what we call a mission fit Patrick Henry student. And so the things we're looking for are a great writer, right? We're looking for someone who has written a lot and can write well. We're looking for someone who can do well on standardized test scores. We're looking for the top 20th percentile. So your world, Ms. Horton, is, that's a big part of what we do. Showing people test prep methodologies and things like that. One neat new test prep methodology, you mentioned a ton of great ones, and your class looks great too. uworld.com is a really neat one we've seen recently. I don't know we'll have to talk about that if you've seen that one, but it's a neat one we just found this year and our students started using, and every student that has done it, every applicant who has used uWorld this year has jumped at least 50 points on the SAT after only a limited amount of prep. It's a neat little service. HSLDA does SAT Prep Genius as well. You probably get emails about that from HSLDA, some good methodologies there. But I have it on a later slide. Test early, test often, right? It's like voting, all right? And so do that as much as you can. I love the idea that, take them all, right? Take the SAT, the CLT, the ACT, take them all. See what your student adapts to best. I always recommend folks take one a piece and then see what your student clicks with the best. I love the January of, you said junior year, right? Sophomore? Okay. So, yeah, and that coincides a lot with your algebras too. And students who haven't taken Algebra 2 yet struggle a whole lot on the SAT we've seen over the years too. So try and get your algebras out of the way. You'll see a big jump there. I've seen over the years. Whenever I see someone with a lower math score, they're like, well, I haven't taken Algebra 2 yet, or pre-calc. Those are nice jumps. And of course, like you were saying, it's a skill-based test. Great books. We love the great books at Patrick, and you're going to read a lot of them at PHC. Why do I say read them in high school? It's because it's like the Bible. We don't just read that once. We read it a bunch, right? And you always get something new out of it every time. Our academic dean says he reads Plato's Republic every year of his life, just in a rhythm, right? And he gets something new out of it every single year. Grades, important. And it's important also not to inflate them, right? And don't just give them all A's. And just, well, I'll squeak them into an A for everything, right? Be honest with the grades. It's okay. And give them what you believe they deserve for the class, not just, I've got an A student, I'll give them all A's, right? The colleges see that. We see that a whole lot. And we see a really low SAT score with a 4.0, and we see a perfect SAT score with a 4.0. That we use those to correlate those, and probably y'all do too. Opportunities, that was spoken about quite a bit. Internships, jobs, resumes, letters of recommendation. We love that. I can always tell a letter of recommendation that someone has no idea who the student is and they're just writing nice things. And I go, I don't need that because it doesn't tell me anything of value. Strengths and opportunities. What are the strengths the student has? What are the opportunities they have to grow? Those are two things I look for in every letter. All right, so that's academics. Spiritual walk is very important to us too. We want to know that you have a walk with Christ, that you love the Lord, that you want to serve Him, that you love your family. We've looked at students twice when they come on our campus visit and they're rude to their parents, right? We're watching for those things. We love that you love your family, you want to serve them, you want to grow. So students, love your mom and dad. They're here to pour into you guys. They've been pouring into you for 17, 16, 18 years. Respect them, love them. They have a lot of experience you don't have. We look for leadership and service opportunities, a humble heart, and then a heart that loves to learn, because the Lord has placed students there for a reason. And I put this verse from Proverbs down here. The plans of the diligent shall surely lead to success. And so plan diligently, be faithful, and be malleable in the Lord's hands. And one final thing, I think a question came up from over here about students that don't take any federal or state aid. We are the albatross in the group here that we don't take any of the federal and state aid. So when Josiah, is that your name? Yeah, Josiah was like, here's the aid, federal, state, and the school aid, institutional aid. That's us. We're institutional aid. So even our need-based aid is institutional. Everything's paid for by a donor writing a check. And we're only 22 years old, so our endowment's not huge, right? So our donors are supplying our annual fund, which supplies our scholarships. So the biggest encouragement I can give you guys is work on the academics, and particularly the SAT, CLT, ACT, one or all of those tests. The higher you get in that, the higher you get in our academic scholarships, and the higher in our scholarship rankings in general. But we have forensic scholarships, music scholarships, leadership and service scholarships, and a need-based aid, which we do through a profile versus through the FAFSA. Similar profile, but it comes straight to us afterwards. So happy to answer any questions on all that, but that was my spiel. Hopefully close to 6 minutes.
You did well. I'm
Excellent.
impressed.
Praise
Full
the Lord.
disclosure, he said, I have a 60-minute presentation, but I could probably work it down to 30. And I said, yeah, you get 6. So he did very, very well. So thank you to all of our sponsors. We do, of course, have others who are not able to be here with us today. But I want to give you an opportunity, if you have a question, not for the specific school, because we'll give you an opportunity to do that later, but an opportunity to ask them any questions you have about the college admissions process or things that you want to know, hey, really, what would be the most beneficial to focus on? You're welcome to ask those now. Does anybody have a question they'd like to ask our panel?
I can talk without a mic. It's generic. If we went to find you all later, I know they're not allowed to have tables per se since we're on another college or university campus. Will they all be available later and where? I already asked one of them.
You tell me.
When we leave here, why don't we all step out this way and you guys can pick a place that you might want to be? Okay, great. I'm coming. We're using the microphone because we are recording for our friends at home, so it's helpful for them to be able to hear your questions.
Hey, thank you for your time first. We've heard the concept of what's called super senior year or high school super senior year. It's new, it's something we're learning about. What's your take on that when you see that on a application or a resume?
When you say super senior, do you mean like a gap year or do you mean like they're just taking an extra year for their senior year, maybe doing some dual enrollment credits?
An extra year.
Okay. Yeah. So at least for Anderson, we're not, for us, as long as the student is meeting the requirements that they need for graduating, whether it be, the state requirements or this or that, we're not looking for how long they took for high school. We're not looking at how old they are. Instead, we're looking at them individually. So because of that, we're not comparing and being like, oh, this student's 18, these other students are 17. So it's really not going to hurt them. And the great thing is we do accept dual enrollment credits. So sometimes we do find that students will do an extra year and they'll do dual enrollment through maybe their local college. Those credits can transfer in and put them ahead of the game. So like, for example, if they're a nursing student, they'll have the opportunity to start their clinicals early. Or if they're coming in and maybe they want to do College of Arts and Sciences, maybe they want to double major. By coming in with any kind of credits, that's going to cover their core curriculum so that they can then have more time to focus on those other majors that they want to do, whether they're adding a minor or they want to study abroad or they want to have two majors. So honestly, taking that extra year, like it is not going to hurt them at all in our eyes. I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like a lot of Christian universities are the same in that they're not looking at students and comparing them based off of how old they are or what year they are. Instead, we look at each student and we're looking at who they are as a person. Anybody else?
Yeah, and a quick follow up to that is take every moment captive. A lot of people will take the gap year and work. I see a lot of students who lose the academic momentum when they take a gap year and they don't keep the academics rolling. But for super senior year particularly, we have dual enrollment. We have our first year freshman year online, but you could do it as a dual enroller if you want, knock a few courses out. I see it as onboarding, on-ramp to the college you're looking at. And a lot of NCFCAs are looking at super senior year to get one more shot at, nationals, right? And we see that a lot. And that's okay. And it's colleges, like you said, don't look at it as, oh, well, didn't do good enough in your first 4 years, you need a fifth year. But intentionally fill that fifth year because you've already fulfilled probably all your high school requirements, right? So you're trying to fill that with other things. So yeah, most of us don't love that. It's fine.
We have time for just one last question, and then again, our sponsors will be out here if you would like to speak with them.
This kind of dovetails on the question about a super senior year. So, in researching scholarship and financial aid, it seems like the biggest packages and scholarship opportunities are for freshmen. So, if you have, for example, a student who takes a gap year, or in the case of a college like Regent, where you're doing that first year online, or I guess even Patrick Henry, you have that option too. How does that affect aid? Do they have to be considered a freshman taking a full course load online to get aid, or do they come in as a transfer student and do they have fewer opportunities for those scholarships than coming in as a sophomore, for example?
Yeah, so I'm going to tag my response to that as different opportunities. Again, it's different opportunities. So we have online and on campus programs at Regent, and most of them are offered either one or the other or hybrid. And depending on where your student is coming from, they have access to different financial aid opportunities. So not necessarily more or less, but just different. So for instance, we have a $4,000 scholarship for graduates of a home education program. And then we also have financial aid opportunities for people who are transferring. We accept up to 90 credit transfer towards a bachelor degree. And we also provide an early college program. So all of those are just provide you with different opportunities and advantages based on what you're looking for and how you want to enter college.
I was just going to say, so for our students that come in with any kind of dual enrollment credits, that does not change their freshman status. So as long as they are still technically a high school senior or high school, as long as they have not graduated, they are still eligible for financial aid. So I actually had a student I worked with personally. She was a homeschooler. She took a gap year, and she genuinely, I think she did mission work during her gap year. And during that gap year is when she applied for our financial aid packages. It did not hurt her in any way. She was still able to apply for our full tuition scholarship. She was still able to compete in all of those. Now, if a student does take a full course load at a college after graduating, that is then what changes them to transfer status. And a transfer would have a little bit, their financial aid just works a little bit differently. And so really the best opportunities are going to be as an incoming freshman, but there are still going to be some financial aid opportunities for transfers as well.
Well, I want to thank all of you for coming today. Hopefully this is helpful to you to give you a vision. I do see a couple of students. I want you guys to hear what Mrs. Horton said. You can learn anything. You can learn anything. So dream big, let God guide your steps, and then look for ways to prepare for that mission that he's sending